Today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. Did you know that in order to get your stimulus check, you had to have filed your taxes for the 2018 or 2019 tax year? If you haven't filed yet, there's good news. The Tax Defense Group can rush e-file your taxes. They know that millions of Americans are struggling, and they want to make sure that you get your stimulus check sooner rather than later. Call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973 to get started. And you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. And our other sponsor for today is Writer Junkie. Due to the global pandemic, Writer Junkie is offering their resume writing service for only $100. And with the 3-day turnaround, you can't beat that price and delivery time. Call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online at writerjunkie.com. Mention that you saw this ad on UCAS Studios, and they'll get right to work. Hi, welcome to the Talk Spot. This is Marcus, and today I'm joined by Andy Bernstein. Andy has been a guest of the show several times, and it's always great to have him on. Andy, thank you for coming back on.
Hey, thanks, Marcus. Always great to connect with you, man.
So how have things been during this whole long drought of, what kind of work have you been able to do during this time?
You know, Marcus, I equate it to that on March 11th, I was like a race car going along really well. And then March 12th, the entire engine fell out. It really, literally, we went from doing tremendous amount of work, getting ready for the playoffs in the NBA with both teams. We still had the regular season to finish up. Just about at the end of the regular season for hockey, we had a full schedule at Staples Center for entertainment and at Microsoft Theater for concerts and stuff. And then boom, 100 to 0 in like 1 second. So that was, a little bit of a shock. And I had to kind of pivot a little bit in terms of my, work and what I was going to pay attention to. And, Marcus, I truly believe that out of adversity sometimes comes opportunity. And for me, opportunity was helping to continue to build my Legends of Sport platform. So we meaning myself and my partners and my producer and researcher, Veronica, we just pointed all our energies to that. So I've been literally doing 2 podcasts a week since the pandemic hit. And I think we've done, I want to say tomorrow, I think is my 20th podcast. So it's kind of crazy. On top of the, 2 seasons we already did. And during this period, we finalized a distribution agreement with the LA Times. So the Legends of Sport podcast will soon be distributed by the LA Times on their platform, as well as all the platforms that you can find your podcasts. So that's very exciting for me and for us, and really kind of helps the growth of what we're trying to do at Legends of Sport.
Wow, that's an incredible deal. Yeah, congratulations on that. Wow.
I
didn't
thank
know
you.
That. Wow.
Super happy about it. Thank you.
So going forward then, will you do, once that agreement totally goes through, will you do 1 or 2 episodes a week, every week from that point forward, or?
No, I think it's going to probably end up being one episode a week. And then, who knows? I mean, we are working very hard on a Kobe tribute that we were planning to run before his enshrinement, which now I'm hearing may be postponed, that the Hall of Fame might postpone their enshrinement this August. So whenever it is, it just gives us more time to work on it. And concurrently with the regular guests that I'm doing, we also launched a legendary sports photographers series on the podcast. So had some amazing photographers. Only one has been released so far, which is my good friend Nathaniel Butler, who's kind of my alter ego on the East Coast for the NBA. But I have the legendary Walter Yost, who's literally one of the heads on Mount Rushmore of sports photography. He's going to be released, I think, later this week. And then I have Bruce Bennett, who is absolutely a legend in hockey photography, sports photography. Other really good friends of mine and amazing sports photographers. So for the photographers out there, it's kind of an interesting kind of series to listen to. But these people also can shed light on the history of the game or whatever it is that they're known for covering. So it's been a lot of fun for me to sit down and talk with these guys.
I guess one thing I was thinking about is, they're talking about reducing the number of people that are going to actually be in this bubble or this campus environment. When it comes to photographers and kind of all of those, I mean, how is that going to go? I mean, are you, like, have they given you any kind of instructions that you can share about how you have to go about being there, like, like photographing the games and stuff? Like, how have they talked to you about that, and how does that look like? I mean, as much as you can, disclose.
No, that's a great question. I wish I had an answer. We collectively, NBA photos photographers, really have not received any information yet. I think everybody's kind of waiting for Adam Silver to make the official announcement as to what the league is planning, and then all the other sort of peripheral planning will obviously has been in place, but that's when we'll all find out what they want us to do. So, there's no sense in speculating and having a million scenarios. I'm the kind of person, especially at my age now, it's like, okay, when you're ready to tell me, and I'll pack my bags if you need me to, and I'll be there. So, that's kind of the way I have to look at it. Otherwise, I might drive myself nuts.
Does it seem daunting, the idea, though, of potentially being in this one location for like a month? I mean, I guess the talks now is that they want to do a couple of regular season games or maybe even play out the regular season. So, I mean, could that potentially be like a month and a half to 2 months of being in that environment?
If you do the math and the numbers, I think so. I mean, I've been places for... Well, I covered the Olympics, 3 or 4 Olympics that I did. That's a 3 to 4 week commitment. You're with the team, and then you are training somewhere else, in a foreign country, and then you get to the actual country where the Olympics are, and you still have some exhibitions, and then the Olympics start. So it's not unprecedented that myself and others, doing what I do have been away for that prolonged amount of time. I don't know how else they can do it and keep it safe other than, making sure everybody is in one place and accounted for and tested constantly and, remove whatever variables there are for, anything to go wrong. So just kind of waiting and seeing what they have in mind. And, you'll be one of the first to know because you'll probably read it before I do.
So in the chain of the NBA, I mean, they don't let everyone know behind the scenes first, or is it just like Adrian Wojnarowski? He just announces everything and everyone finds out at the same time.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. I mean, you have to think about that. They have to be very controlling as to the information that gets out that might be false information that, other people might take and run with it as being, the gospel coming from, quote unquote, a league source. And I never want to be considered a league source. So I'm fine with them working it all out over there in New York and New Jersey, and then, let me know what they have in mind.
What do you think the odds are that the NBA will come back? Like, is it almost looking like a for sure thing?
Yeah, I think it's pretty for sure. I mean, if you see, for example, I read today that Governor Cuomo in New York told all the pro sports franchises that they can start, opening their training camps and start, sort of getting back to a regimen that's somewhat normal. That's great news. I know the Lakers and Clippers open their training facilities and, under strict guidelines and all kinds of, regulations. But that's all pointing to, look, I don't think they would have done that if they didn't, they meaning the NBA and the networks and the governors and whoever have to be involved if they didn't really foresee sports coming back. So, and the people need it. I mean, Governor Cuomo said it today. He says that, the people need sports. They need something while they're sheltered indoors. And sports has always been this distraction for the public. I mean, if you think about, even going back to the world wars and 9/11 and Vietnam War and whatever, I mean, even in the worst of times in our country and in the world, sports provided a little bit of, an escape. And now that everyone's stuck inside, or, things are starting to open up a little bit, I think we all need sports back. We being sports fans and just the general public, and especially us who work in sports. So, I see it happening. I see it coming back.
I mean, I think you definitely raised a really good point. I mean, there was a number of people I saw yesterday that were totally praising the golf match that happened, and I even watched it. I watched probably about an hour of it, and that's. I don't think I've ever spent more than 3 minutes watching a golf match in my entire life.
Yeah. I think right now you'd watch probably checkers, or remote control car race or something. Who knows? But look what they did. I mean, they raised $20 million from that event, and God bless those guys. It was fantastic. So we need more of that. And golf is the kind of sport that can be played and enjoyed under the regulations that are in place. So that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes the NBA a little bit, I guess, more difficult is, I mean, you have to touch other people. I mean, everyone's touching the ball. I mean, you're all right there on top of each other, whereas, with golf, I mean, I even saw there was a couple points where I think it was Tom Brady and Phil Mickelson, they were going to high five and they stopped each other, and it's like, well, yeah, you don't even have to touch each other, really. I mean, if you don't want to.
True. Yeah, I guess tennis is like that too. It was kind of interesting that they had that. Was it a UFC match or a boxing match or something?
Yeah.
That was kind of bizarre, if you ask me. But
I think they've actually done 2 UFC events since this lockdown happened.
I think it's weird. Anyway, in my opinion, but I mean, I could potentially do my job without really ever touching another person. I mean, we're all professionals, and we come in, do our thing. There are surfaces and common areas that I guess we would have to be very conscious of, and that would have to be continually sanitized. But I think that's what they have in mind, and that's why they're looking at the venues that they're looking at, because they're very secure, can be sanitized easily, and probably the best scenario for coming back.
So have you heard of this talk about, or the idea that whoever wins the championship this year, that there'll be an asterisk next to it? The idea, it's like, oh, this was, the weird year kind of title. Do you think that should be an actual real criticism or not?
No, I don't think that should be, and I also don't think it should have been, and it hasn't been, but people talked about that from, 99, 2000, or whenever it was that the Spurs won, and it was a shortened season because of the lockout and all that. I mean, season is a season. Everybody's got to play whatever hand they're dealt, and you still got to win. So, if you're playing, they played 60 something games before the season was put on hold. This isn't like this thing happened in November after 2 weeks. I mean, 7/8 of the season had already been played. So I don't see an asterisk even being appropriate in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the only time that could potentially maybe come up is if you had something where, let's say it was the Bucks and Lakers in the finals, and if LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Danny Green all got the virus in the before Game 1. That would be the only time where you can. I feel like maybe you can make an argument, but yeah, I agree with you. I mean, most of the seasons have been played. I mean, everyone's going to have the same disadvantage or advantage, however you want to look at it. I mean, there's not going to be home court advantage at all, and
right. No, but to your scenario, I mean, they at the NBA are working for that scenario not to happen. I mean, that no player will test positive, and if they do, they will immediately deal with it, like on the spot. So, the prospect of that happening to 4 top players before a finals, something would have to go very, very wrong in the entire plan and the model of what they have in mind. So, obviously, we don't want to see anybody test positive. So I don't see that happening. I see them being extremely careful, and it being, basketball is basketball, whether it's played in a neutral site in front of no fans, if it's played in home arenas, it'll be completely a different theme, different vibe, different experience for the players and for all of us, for fans watching at home. But it's a different time, so we're dealing with it in all kinds of ways, and I think the new normal will be something that we will come out of this with that none of us really foresaw, 4 months ago. So that remains to be seen. But I was talking to Tim Leiweke on my podcast. Is actually coming out this week, and Tim, was the architect of Staples Center in downtown LA, and the CEO and president of AEG, and now his group, the Oakview Group, is really at the forefront of figuring out how to make the fan experience as great as it was and has been, but needing to keep the social distancing and the sanitizing and all of the measures that we're used to now in place once people start going back to venues. And it's a daunting task. I mean, he's got a lot of really smart people working on that. So, let's tune in maybe a year from now and see what that's like.
Yeah. No, I mean, you raise a really good point. I mean, in some of these, you've been there. I mean, you've been at, countless games and events. I mean, I can't even imagine the logistical nightmare of trying to figure out how can you have, 10,000 people at an event and they're all next to each other. How do you manage to work in all of these new rules and regulations, and for how long? I mean, do you build this and then do you just keep that infrastructure for forever? I mean, do you just say, hey, going forward, we're always going to be wiping down things constantly? Or
yeah, look, I don't know. And there's the vaccine, of course, we are all hoping for as being kind of the the rescuer. But let's keep in mind, before 9/11, I used to travel, obviously, and you could walk right to your gate. I mean, there was no real security, and even going back to before 9/11 in the 80s and 70s. And, now that's the new normal. I mean, you would never think in a million years that you could get out of a taxi cab and walk, with your luggage, through the terminal and end up on your airplane without going through security and, metal detector and a pat down and all that stuff that we're so used to now, right? So, this COVID-19 situation is going to have to cause some change, I think, permanently in how things are done. Now, whether, I'm sure you've seen it, I've seen it, all these machines that will measure temperature, and they'll measure, in addition to being this cool thing that they showed, like a mix of a metal detector and a temperature machine, like you walk in and it'll see if you have any metal on you, and it'll also take your temperature, So maybe that's the new thing. I don't know. Or maybe you have to be subjected to, answering questions. Hey, you've been sick, or do you currently have, a cold, or blah, 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 that kind of thing. And venues might have to make tough decisions on who they let in and who they don't.
I mean, I know from just a sports fan's perspective, I mean, I'm totally fine with no fans being there, even if that lasts for the remainder of this year. I mean, as long as we got the sports, I'm personally totally cool with it.
Yeah. Yeah, look, we all want sports back, and we want it back in a safe way. And even though there's some, numbskulls out there who really don't understand that, they're part of everyone else's health, that's a whole political discussion we can get into another time. But if everything is standardized across the board, you're going to go to a concert, you're going to go to a basketball game, you're going to go to a football game, a stadium, whatever it is. And this is just the way it's going to be. I don't know what that means, but like I said, a lot smarter people than us are making these decisions, and I have a lot of trust in them. And again, the vaccine will help. The vaccine will sort of alleviate, I guess, the fear, aspect of it. But it's not going to alleviate the fact that we're not going to see, such close human contact probably anymore in these public situations, and that arenas will have to, implement new measures, and teams will have to be more careful as well. So I think that's all good, and it's just kind of the way things have to be because of the situation we're in now.
Yeah, I think you raised a really good point. I think even just from a normal sanitary standpoint, I mean, it's not necessarily wrong for people to be a little bit more conscious of, washing their hands. And
of course, yeah, absolutely.
You've probably seen just countless people where they walk out of the bathroom without washing their hands, and you're like,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, what are you? You're touching everything, and you walked out of the stall.
Yeah,
and you rinsed for 2 seconds.
Imagine that venues, retrofit or new venues are made where you have to wash your hands before you exit the restroom, right? I mean, like, there's no way to get out of the restroom. It's like going through an airport. You have to go through the metal detector. You have no choice. Yeah. So maybe arenas and venues are built that way, or retrofitted so that it's just the way it is. Or maybe there's a machine that you walk through that sanitizes you or something. I don't know. I'm interested to see what comes out of this, quite honestly.
I mean, I think the hand washing part, I'm totally open to that. Like, I was already a big person who washed his hands. Like, I wash my hands a lot anyways, normally, even before the pandemic, and I'm okay with that aspect. Yeah, like, if that was a thing where it was like, hey, before you leave, wash your hands.
Yeah.
I think I'm totally okay with that. But I wanted to ask you before we get going, like, so obviously The Last Dance that aired, and that was a huge hit. Everyone was talking about it. I mean, partially because nothing else is on, so everyone had to talk about it.
Yeah.
But what was that like? Because I know that. So were you there? Like, how many games do you feel like you actually watched Michael play and like you actually photographed? I mean, are we talking in the realms of like hundreds or?
Oh yeah, for sure. I go back to Michael's rookie season. So
oh my gosh,
I remember shooting him. Yeah, I remember shooting him as a rookie when he came in, and what was it, the 84-85 season, after winning the gold medal. I didn't shoot the Olympics, and the Olympics, of course, were in LA in '84, and the basketball was played in the Forum, believe it or not. I went to a couple of games and to just watch. But I go back to his rookie year and was there, for those 7 years leading up to when he won his first championship in '91. So, I've seen him probably hundreds of times. I mean, after Kobe, and this is probably in order, after Kobe, Magic, and Shaq, I've seen Jordan probably the fourth most of any player I've ever shot.
Wow.
Yeah, well, so I was there for every one of those finals games, all 6 championships, every single game, all-star games. NBA Entertainment filmed everything that you saw in The Last Dance, all the behind the scenes, and most of the game footage and all that stuff came from my buddies at NBA Entertainment. So Nat Butler and I were piggybacking on their shoots. I was on so many shoots that they did, and so was Nat. So you'll see stuff behind the scenes, but you won't actually realize, there was a still photographer standing right next to the film guy. So it was super fun to watch, and I got a big kick out of seeing myself and Nat and all of my friends, doing what they do, and we're all texting each other, every episode after we see each other, taking screenshots and stuff. It was a lot of fun.
I thought I saw you in at least one of the episodes once.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was in it a lot, actually, yeah. So it was kind of cool. I had never seen this one piece of footage, my iconic shot of Michael with his first trophy in '91 with his dad next to him, and a lot of people have seen that picture, but I had never seen the video during that moment that picture was taken. So the video camera was around to Michael's left a little bit, so you could actually see me in the reflection of the ball of the trophy. like
Oh, wow.
preparing to shoot the picture. And then you see the flash go off, which is the actual picture, the moment the picture happened. It's so cool.
Wow, that's incredible. Oh
Yeah,
my
it's pretty cool.
gosh.
Yeah, it was awesome. And then, of course, this final shot, the last shot, we like to call it the 6.6 seconds
The one
dagger
in
against
Utah?
Utah. Yeah. So, they highlighted that in the episode. And,
Because you took that photo? You took that photo?
well, I didn't take that photo, Marcus. I mean, there's a long story about it, but essentially that photo was shot by me because I triggered the camera that was in Fernando Medina's hand, who was the photographer who gets the credit for the photo, because he was follow focusing and composing on the opposite baseline. So it was Fernando actually took that picture, but I pushed the button that made the picture happen, if that makes any sense.
That does make sense. Okay.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, I'm going to point you and everybody to our Legends of Sport Instagram and our blog, legendsofsport.blog, because I go into depth explaining how that picture was actually produced.
I mean, that's one of the most iconic photos, I feel like, in all of sports. Like, even if you're not a person that even likes the NBA at all, I feel like that's one of the most iconic. Like, you might have even come across that and say, oh, yeah, like, I knew what was happening there, but I didn't know what was happening in the game, but...
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable. I mean, quite frankly, the only person who didn't get that picture was me. There were 3 people that potentially could have shot that picture: as myself, Fernando Medina, and Scott Cunningham. Both of those guys were what we were called human drones, where they're attached to this trigger system that like I explained, I trigger their camera, and I got blocked at the last second in my spot, but I at least had the presence of mind of pushing the button at the right time so that those guys could get the shot, and they both did.
Wow, that's incredible. What was it like? What was it like being around the Bulls in the 90s? I mean, was it like, how does it compare to, let's say, like the Celtics and Lakers of the 80s? Like, was it even beyond that, or what? Like, I mean, I was like, when Michael won his last title, I wasn't even 10 years old yet, so I was still relatively a kid. So I was,
Yeah,
I mean, I knew who I wasn't even that big of a basketball fan when Jordan was playing, because, I was like 6 years old. But, I knew who he was, though. Like, I had heard of him, and like I knew what he looked like. But
Yeah.
I mean, like, what was it actually like at the time? I mean, was it just at a stratosphere that it's incomparable to other things you've seen in the NBA world, or what was it like?
Well, it was like literally like a rock tour. I mean, these guys were bigger than really any other sports figures at the time and any other teams that we'd ever seen. And that was, in part helped by the Dream Team in '92, just elevating these basketball players to literally like rock star proportions. And, Michael being Michael, and everything that he was and stood for, and amazing his game was, and the shoes and everything, just was the perfect mix of everything just exploding at the same time. And the NBA did a masterful job of seizing the moment and really marketing, genius marketing, all from David Stern's direction. But, my good friend Rick Welts, who now is the president of the Warriors, and other people that were involved at the time, really saw that, this is our moment. So, for them to, there was a lot going on with the Bulls, as you saw in The Last Dance. A lot of backstories. They bring in this character, Dennis Rodman. There's all that stuff going on with Phil and Jerry Krause and Michael leaving the game, and coming back and winning 3 more titles. I mean, it was just, I don't think anybody could have thought up sort of a script like that. So it was wonderful. I loved being part of it. I loved going to Chicago, especially the old Chicago Stadium before they moved to the United Center. Was just this dumpy old place, but it was so much fun to shoot in. That and the old Boston Garden. I'll always remember those places. And different than Showtime and the Celtics, because there wasn't the crush of media attention back in the 80s. You know, the Lakers and Celtics were amazing, and that was an incredible era of the NBA. But you know, you had a fraction of the media covering the NBA. Wasn't broadcast in very many countries outside the U.S. at that point, and I think by the time, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I think by the time, you know, the second three-peat of the Bulls, I mean, the NBA was in over 100 countries. The NBA Finals had taken, you know, epic proportion in terms of a sporting event. The NBA All-Star Game was, you know, truly the showcase for the league. It went from being a game on a Sunday afternoon that nobody ever watched, honestly, to being this incredible showcase event, you know, and a weekend, which was all Rick Welts, by the way. He's the architect of that. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think now in the era of social media, I mean, I shudder to think what if the Bulls were playing now, or if social media existed then, you know, how much. I don't even know they could have gotten any bigger, but how much bigger would that whole thing have been? Who knows?
I feel like this kind of, especially after watching it and just, you know, watching clips of the NBA in the past and just, you know, reading up about it, it seems like in the early 90s, the semblance of the modern NBA was there. Is this kind of seem like that's the case, where it's like you kind of look at the modern NBA, like I'm talking things like, you know, pay scale and kind of just the way that it's looked at?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even the style of play had changed from a physical, you know, center-dominated game. You know, the Bulls didn't really have a all-star, superstar center. They had a center that was built, you know, their centers were built for the triangle. So, you know, what we're seeing now is a further evolution with the game now, you know, going from the inside to the way outside, you know. But, I like that era, you know, that era of from Showtime through the Jordan era into the 90s, you know, late 90s, early 2000s. You know, that kind of basketball for me was so much fun to shoot, and actually even a little bit more fun to shoot because you had so much action going in, you know, under the basket. And big guys dominating. You think about, you know, Karl Malone and Charles Oakley and, you know, these big dudes who just, you know, dominated. And, of course, the great centers, you know, Kareem being pretty much the end of that era, but, you know, followed by Hakeem Olajuwon and David Robinson, you know, Tim Duncan, all those guys. It's just, you know, things evolve and change. Now, you know, I have to change lenses because I have to shoot more from the outside. So it's just kind of the way it is.
There's something about the game where it just, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people have criticized the Rockets, but, you know, sometimes you watch the games and they're just not as much fun to watch because of the style of play where these outside threes and it's trying to get fouled all the time. And it's.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that, Marcus. I mean, as much as I love the NBA, you know, I love hockey too, and I was brought up on hockey. And when I was growing up, you know, hockey was so physical, and the rules were a little bit different, you know, back then. And I don't know if it was better or worse, but you know, I kind of enjoy thinking back on those days where, you know, you'd see more hockey fights than you see now, that kind of thing. So I don't know, maybe I'm being nostalgic right now because I haven't been able to shoot anything in 2 months, but. But, you know, it's all good, and it's just, you know, the way things evolve. But I would probably agree with you. I mean, watching, you know, 50 plus threes being shot a game is a little bit tedious and not particularly as photogenic as, you know, guys going in and banging each other and dunking and things like that as much. But, you know, it is what it is. So not much I can do about it.
I guess that's a good point. Well, Andy, well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Definitely, I'd love to talk to you again sometime, maybe more about the experience with the Bulls and everything. But
yeah, of course, Marcus.
There's some construction work happening right near me, so it's making a lot of noise. But
I can't hear it. But anytime, Mark, it's always great to connect, and hopefully basketball will be back soon, and we can talk down the road about that.
We want to thank today's sponsors again, the Tax Defense Group and Writer Junkie. You can contact the Tax Defense Group at 800-850-7973. And Writer Junkie's phone number again was 805-587-7966.